How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Chair Talk. Guys, we're going to discuss psychological safety in the workplace. We did it before in an effort to kind of work with the rookies to make sure that when they come in, we keep them invested. But I also think that the same thing could be applied to senior staff. I do believe right now senior staff also need an environment where they feel psychologically safe. I'm a big fan of a book that came out by Timothy Clark called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. And we're going to model this dialogue from his research, but we're going to make it our own. We are going to apply his research to us. And I think if this all makes sense, this can help us increase employee morale. Now, mind you, it's a two-way street. You know, management's got to put the effort in, but front line's got to be intentional with their effort to receive it and take advantage of that effort. It's going to be a great discussion. We're going to have some fun. I'm going to expose this model to Joe Pomponio for the first time, so we're going to discuss it step by step. And I really do think, guys, this is the best way for us to move forward, create good morale, and then ultimately help corrections change into a direction that we all agree with. I mean, that's the key. All right, let me get Joe. Oh, wait, before I get Joe, let me talk about what I have on the market. Inmate Manipulation Decoded, guys. You guys got to check out this book. It's a great read. Helps out people or agencies if you're dealing with inmate manipulation. Definitely fills that gap. If your training isn't providing it, get this book, please. It's available on Amazon. Link to that is in the description. As of now, this book is used for training pretty much all over the country. We also have... How to Succeed in Corrections, Lessons Learned While Working in a Prison. This book is available through Blue 360 Media. And guys, this book just got tons of advice on how to succeed in corrections, which could be a very tough profession. This got tips for both tactical all the way up to leadership. And then at the end of the month, we also have, in the month of February of 2024, we also have this book coming out, Tips for New Corrections Officers and Their Supervisors. Again, same format. This book's got loads of tips as well. A little bit smaller than this book, but definitely worth the read. And then I'm working on something right now. Just going to kind of come up with as many tips as I can. I try not to reiterate the same tips, or if I have to, I try to create another perspective. And I'm also working on a daily reader, which, you know, I try to release one a day. And then hopefully by beginning of next year, we'll get that done. But this one's a little bit harder because it's 365 topics that I haven't dove into yet. So I'm trying to figure out what those topics need to be. So I definitely is something I got to figure out why I'm in this profession, because once I leave, it may be harder for me to come up with these topics. All right, let me get Joe. What up, Joe?
Hey, what's going on, Anthony?
Joe, you mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Absolutely. My name is Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice of 30 years and currently working in our local sheriff's department in the jail division, and panel member for Chair Talk.
Yes, and we love having you, Joe. So, Joe, today's discussion is going to be about creating an environment in the workplace in which staff feel psychologically safe. Now, the funny thing is about corrections, we're always so concerned about being physically safe. And I think, you know, we also should make an effort into providing an environment that is psychologically safe. Now, again, we touched on this research before with the rookies, but I want to revisit it again for senior staff because I think it's that important. I haven't been able to put down Timothy Clark's book, so I know there's more that I can get from it. So I think this will be a great dialogue. And again, this dialogue is to use this theory and then go ahead and show people not only can it increase morale, but how we can create change that is pretty much beneficial. Because as of now, Joe, you have to admit change has been pretty much one-sided. Would you agree?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of change in the last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, so we have a lot to cover, but we're going to go through it. So granted, let's start with this first thing real quick. So I had to take this thumbnail from his presentation because there's no other picture of it on the internet, or at least that I could find. And it talks about the self-centering instinct. So guys, when we're talking about creating an environment or a workplace environment that makes us feel psychologically safe, that means we have to do what we can to reduce fear. And there are a lot of supervisors and management that lead through fear. They're very positional. Basically, I'm above you, and if you don't do as I say, these are the consequences. So having said that, when you lead through position, it is the same as leading through fear, because as I said, I'm telling you what to do, and if you decide not to do it, you will get written up and possibly disciplined. So having said that, when you have leadership that constantly pushes the fear button in order to get their people to comply, well, all you're going to get are people that are going to kind of fall into self-preservation mode. They're not going to take strategic risk. And I love the word he uses here, the self-censoring instinct. So let's just talk about this for a second, Joe. So as you can see on this, Joe, you have one side fear and you have the other side psychologically safe. Now, granted, we don't want to be anywhere near that side of fear. We want to be all the way to the other end of creating a workplace environment in which staff feel psychologically safe. Now, the unique thing is when we interview for supervisors, when we interview for management, maybe more so management, because management could be more appointed. There's some discretion in hiring management. Are we looking at management that can provide an environment that is psychologically safe? Or are we just focusing more on technical skills? Are we looking at how they manage people, how they're going to build a cohesive team? I mean, these are good things that we need to find out, because this is what we want our leadership to be. We want leadership that can build cohesive teams. But it's not always authority and compliance. I want leadership that can provide an environment that is psychologically safe so I can get the best from my people. But Joe, would you agree? Now, I'm sure you've worked with it. Have you ever worked with supervisors or leadership, management that really do push fear? So basically, this is my position. Do as I say. And if you don't, you're going to get written up. And then what does that do to you as a subordinate?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I've worked with several in my career that, led by fear and intimidation. The downside to that is when you exhibit those traits as a supervisor or administrator, you will cause a disconnect between the staff below you. They won't take the opportunity to learn because they're afraid of screwing up, because they're afraid of getting written up. The biggest thing is, a lot of supervisors need to understand that we need the COs to help a lot more than they need us. As far as the promotional process goes, it's kind of hard. You're never going to pin the tail on the perfect donkey. Each supervisor that you promote is going to have something that they need to work on. You got the people that, come in and say, when I make supervisor, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You people are going to mind, they beat their chest. Over time, they find that they're not beating their chest, but they're beating their head against the wall because they caused a total fear disconnect in their staff. Instead of providing not only just a safe physical environment, but a safe psychological environment, because the staff need to know that you're going to be there for them, not, that you're not going to be there to put your foot on them.
And I want to add, so Joe, that's key, by the way. I mean, the key is we're looking for an environment that shows respect both ways, especially with our senior staff. Now, when we discussed this with the rookies, and we were talking about the rookies a few episodes back, we said that the rookies may come in with a sense of exclusion, right? Because again, they got to kind of find their way in. They got to find their way to connect. And at that point there, I said that the senior staff, your priority now is to make them feel included. Now, even though we use the word excluded, because that's kind of the model he uses here, I would just say for the rookies, if I could look back, the rookies are looking to belong, and our job is to make them feel welcome. For the senior staff, I do like using the word excluded, because for a while, frontline does not feel that they are valued. They feel they are separate from everything that is being created in an effort to change corrections, prison jail management, and the way it's headed. So having said that, I think exclusion works well, because once you feel separate and then you start to feel excluded, what's excluded? Less than. So I do believe when you look at this model here, the first model you see at the bottom is exclusion. I think for senior staff, that feeling of exclusion makes more sense than it does for the rookies, because for the senior staff at this point, because they're not involved or they don't feel that they're involved in the changes that are happening, there's a good chance that they feel less than, obviously, less than valued by those that are above them. So, Joe, would you agree that because of the changes that are happening and basically senior staff most of the time not being a part of those changes, not being a part of, having any influence in where we're headed? Like basically you got people from the outside developing, as we discussed before, policies and procedures. They're not giving staff a chance that really know the work that has to be done to implement at least the procedures behind some of the policies being made. And if we continue to do that, obviously we're going to have more senior staff that just don't feel included. And at this point, they feel they have no value. So I do agree that they could feel excluded. And now we have to start from there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we're in such a weird predicament now in the correctional history that, a lot of agencies are so short staffed that us supervisors are spending more time with the rookies trying to get them up to speed that, sometimes we take for granted that the old hands are just going to keep right on trucking, that they know that we depend on them, but we don't actually tell them we depend on them. So I can see where your veteran staff will feel excluded because, we're spending a lot of our time on our majority rookie staff versus our minority veteran staff. We're trying to get everybody below, the veteran status up to speed and try to build a cohesive team that, we sometimes forget about the veteran staff and we take for granted that, they're always going to be there and they're going to truck on, just like, it's another day. So, yeah, I can definitely see where your veteran staff will, can have some, sometimes have that feeling of exclusion from, your shift activities.
Right. So now, by the way, guys, when you look at this chart, it's actually, you're going to see it's kind of like at a 90-degree angle, but to the left and below would be respect and permission. And if you are, this is like kind of like they consider it like a bowling lane, and you don't want to go into the gutter. So paternalism would be too much respect and no permission. So basically, it's you're coddled, you're micromanaged. So we don't want that. And exploitation is no respect, but you have the permission. So basically, you're like slaves. So basically, we want to keep ourselves in the middle. You want to have the perfect balance of respect and permission. And that's provided by those that are above, the management working with their frontline employees. Now, the first thing we have, so again, senior staff do probably feel like they're on the outside looking in. I get that. They feel that the pressures from the outside world has created changes that have truly broken away from our core values. So we need to get that back. And we have lost that. Sadly, we have lost that. And unfortunately, the people that are coming in, the new people in this profession, even the new people that are moving up, they don't know what those core values may be because they've never been around it. And even though they feel that they're operating on a 9, the scale is no longer up to 10. It's in the hundreds. So it's like, yeah, you may think you're effective, but we're still in the basement. So we need to do what we can, why we can, to make sure that we provide senior staff a chance to kind of hold on to those core values and make sure that somewhere along the line when we're introducing change, that those core values are involved. That's part of the reason why I wrote these books. I'm going to be honest with you, because I think these books hold on to a lot of the core values. And a big concern I had was that we're going to lose them. And these core values are so important that the sad thing is you don't know they're not being done until they're not being done. It kind of relates very well with the basics that you need to evolve from. So we're talking about inclusion. So there's going to be the definition of respect when it comes to inclusion, safety. Then you're going to have the definition of permission. So permission and respect are going to be balanced. And then you're going to have where the social exchange is. So basically what me as a manager or as a prison manager, as a supervisor, got to provide the senior staff, and in return, what the senior staff have to provide to me. Now, mind you guys, the cool thing about this all is we're going to go from building psychological safety so we can be innovative. That's the key. We need decision makers in corrections. And one thing that happens when you have a supervisor or management that lead by fear, that are extremely about consequence over really cultivating their employees, is that we will be afraid to make decisions, right? Again, self-preservation. We're going to become risk aversive. And I know people hate the word risk, but by the way, when I say risk, it doesn't negate the fact that there's experienced people taking those risks. I'm not just saying blindly take a risk, because I'm going to tell you something. Corrections, and Joe, I got to get your thoughts on this. We deal with complexity. You know, you got to make decisions. Every decision has a risk, but I'm not saying you blindly go in. You're leaning on your experience, and you got to make a choice. Would you agree, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all decisions we make are, not only complex, but, require some degree of common sense too. So you can't just charge headlong into a blind decision and expect it to go well when you don't think about the consequences and the outcome.
Yeah. Now, so the first thing is, remember, guys, we got to bring senior staff back to the table. So again, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that they feel valued. We want to make sure that they feel appreciated in regards to the work they do, whether it's routine or not. I mean, we got to start going back and really start showing respect for the people that are keeping the facility moving. You know, I get the recognitions, I get that, but appreciation's a little bit different. Appreciation is just kind of like a respect for the people that have been doing the job for a certain amount of time and just kind of managing the basics so we can do everything that's extraordinary. Because in corrections, everything really does model from the basics. An example, if we don't have officers doing their routine tours, creating an environment that's safe and secure, we can't go nowhere, right? So, and that's the basic function of corrections, prisons, and jail management. Now, when it comes to inclusion safety, so now we're crossing into this first layer. So remember, guys, there's going to be 4 layers for psychological safety. And then once we reach the 4, that's when you start to see staff becoming more innovative, which is what we need. Innovative to me equates to decision making, right? Now, inclusion safety, the respect part. Now, mind you, guys, when it comes to people feeling included, for the first 2 steps, it's on management and supervisors to provide. And then the last 2 steps, we're going to need that senior staff now to be intentional with their efforts. So for the first thing when it comes to inclusion, the respect is this. Management should respect the individual's innate need to be included, accepted, and gain a sense of belonging. So, Joe, for many years now, senior staff, I don't believe they feel included in decisions that are being made. I don't feel that because they don't feel that they're included. I don't believe that they feel that they're accepted. You know, I don't believe they feel that they're accepted because they don't feel that they're included. And again, when you have senior staff that don't feel included or accepted, I honestly feel that there's no way that they can feel a sense of belonging, and not just even with my supervisors or management, but just with that agency overall. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, and it's a tough one. It's a tough one as a supervisor or any part of management to get some sort of harmony and cohesion in getting acceptance or giving acceptance to everybody. When I praise my team, I do it as a team because I want everybody to feel that they're equal. Rookies and veterans. Especially when we had a good day. There have been times where I pulled some of my veteran bosses aside and thanked them for what they were doing, how they were teaching the rookie staff and how they were handling things without me having to announce anything on the radio. Everybody wants that sense of belonging. But I think truly to me, when you praise them as a team, that builds cohesion in that team, because not only are you lifting up these rookie officers, but you're letting your veteran bosses know that you still appreciate everything that they do. And at some point, they both rise up to that same level and they start working hand in hand. And that's when you have a good cohesive team.
Yeah, and guys, mind you, if you're management and you've taken the position, and prior to you in that position, there was just people that just didn't do the job the way it should be done, maybe very negative in their approach, very, I'm the boss and I'm leading through my position. People have to see you first so they can build trust in the position you represent now. So I think for here, when it comes to that definition of respect, as I mentioned, the best way for management to showcase that It's just being appreciative of the efforts that are being done. And I mean specific appreciations as well. I don't just talk about generalized appreciations like, hey, Joe, I appreciate you staying for that double last night. I know it was tough. I know you're looking to go home, and I just want to say thank you. You know, again, it's the attempt. Again, not to the point where it becomes superficial, but just enough to know that the staff member feels noticed and you know enough about them to specifically give them that level of appreciation. Now you got that permission, right? So what is management saying to, frontline when they start showing appreciation? They're giving them permission for the individuals to interact and be their true and authentic self. You know what's crazy, guys? A little story here. Sometimes we have our specialized teams and they do a lot of specialized work. And some of them want to be seen by their higher level management. And a lot of people think that the effort from those specialized teams is more for recognition. And it's not from recognition. It's more of, one, appreciation, but two, to kind of let them know that that team is going in the right direction. Because a lot of specialized teams, they're figuring out things on the fly. And sometimes it's great for someone from management to come down and appreciate their efforts. One, to kind of let them know what you're doing is great, but also to let them know you're going where we need to be. So having said that, you got the respect, and then you got the permission, which is permission for the individual to interact and be their true and authentic self. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be authentic to yourself, and you got to be authentic to your people. This career here is one of these where you can't just lead by blind loyalty or blind faith. In order to be true to your people, you got to be authentic to yourself first and your beliefs, and you have to be authentic in those beliefs that you project onto your team.
I like that. And by the way, as we talked about this before, but leadership isn't about perks. Trust me. No. Now there is a social exchange here. So if I'm management and Joe is, senior staff, I'm going to give Joe a chance to feel included. But in exchange, what do I want from Joe? I just don't want to be hurt. That's the key. I know a lot of people think like in corrections, trust is earned. It's not, guys. Distrust is earned. Trust to some levels got to be automatic. And does it sound naive? We're not inmates. We're not inmates. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I have trusted people blindly that I've worked next to, and I've been quite all right with it. But yes, there are some people that do foolish things that I've worked next to, but I don't allow that to be generalized over to the trust I got to give my people. As management, especially as management, I can't micromanage all the areas I cover. I can't. So I have to give people trust. So the thing about this right now is, as long as you don't promise to hurt me, I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to bring you in, and we're going to figure this out together. So Joe, that's pretty simple. That's a very simple social exchange. Definitely something for management. I'm bringing the person in. They whatever it is, they've been here for 20 years. Whatever it is, come on. Come on. Come in. We got trust. Let's see where we can go from here together. So that's an easy social exchange. So now the next part. So once we get senior staff to feel included, and that's important. What I mean by included at this point is just kind of appreciating them, letting them know that they're valued. The next part is giving them a chance to learn, giving them an environment where it's safe to learn. Now, granted, guys, sometimes a lot of the changes that are happening in corrections are not so transparent. So a lot of the staff are being pushed into a direction that they have no understanding of why. There's no transparency. So I think for us, in an effort to grow together, in an effort to share that partnership and growth and development, we have to provide some level of transparency so staff can grow with us, so staff can learn with us. So again, Joe, the respect factor here. So now remember, guys, this is still on management. This is still on supervisors. Is when it comes to respect, I'm going to respect as management my senior officers or my senior staffs, individuals' innate need to learn, grow, and develop mastery. So what am I saying? As we go through changes, I got to be transparent enough to kind of explain the why so we can answer their questions so they can be more effective in the direction that we are going. What's your thoughts on that level of respect that must be provided, Joe?
I mean that's that's a necessity. I mean, anytime you make a change in corrections, when you change as a team, you have to have that why out there for them. You don't want to just make a change and let everybody make blind decisions on how to implement them. You need to discuss them. They need to know why. They need to have input as to how do we incorporate this into our already daily operations. It's imperative that we're transparent with what needs to happen, and getting input from the staff is how can we make this happen. Not only are you giving them a problem to solve, but you're also teaching them critical thinking skills, that helps evolve their abilities later on down the road, to get them to critical thinking on their own without having to be provoked.
Yeah, I like that. And guys, I want you to know something for people in management. Transparency is the best way to cultivate trust. I mean, literally, I mean, corrections, we're kind of like outcome driven when really we should be effort driven. And effort can only be seen through transparency. So having said that, transparency is key. Now, granted, for the permission side, it's for permission for the senior staff to engage in the learning process and make mistakes, which means that, remember, guys, I truly agree with this. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And what I mean by that is people sometimes are so nervous to ask a question because they're going to be judged. But mind you, they haven't been included in this for so long. So they may not know where we're at. So we got to give them a chance to ask all those questions that can help us get to that same page. So for people that have senior staff in that room and, instead of you trying to learn from their perspective as well to see where you can meet in the middle, instead you judge and just don't think that they can get it. No, that's your job, is to help them. And you have to encourage them to ask questions and be an active part in what we are doing, which is our growth and development. So that, again, that's on us, right? We have to provide an environment where they feel that it's safe to learn and grow in this new direction. What's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give them the opportunity to not only, learn it, how to change it. Um, you know, I remember being taught a long time ago, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I've always told the staff, if you don't feel comfortable bringing it up to me, which you shouldn't have any reason to, because I'm always here and there's no such thing as a stupid question, because I'd rather you ask and get the right information than not, and lose some in translation. But I also implore them to kind of lean on my senior staff too, because I want the senior staff to feel like they're contributing to the growth of these rookies as well. Answer the question. I don't care how stupid you think it is. Answer it professionally. Give them the credibility of being able to come to somebody and ask that question. And the same thing for the supervisors. Let them rookies come to you and ask those questions. You may think it's trivial, but your answer could make or break whether or not these employees approach you.
Yeah, guys, by the way, Joe, you're spot on, because if you think about it, as we go through these four levels, 4 stages of psychological safety, fear separates, so you won't feel included. Yeah. Fear can stop people from learning, especially if they feel they're going to be ridiculed or harassed or condescended. Now, there's a social exchange here. So remember now, guys, when it comes to inclusion, and which was the first part, inclusion, safety, and learner safety, the learner safety exchange. So I'm management. What am I going to give to Joe? I'm going to encourage Joe. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do whatever I can to provide an environment for Joe to want to learn in the directions that we are headed. I want Joe to ask me questions. I want Joe to be actively involved. And then in exchange, what do I want Joe to give me? I want Joe to be engaged. If I'm going to provide senior staff an environment where first now they're included, and now we're providing an environment where we're open, we're transparent, and here I am, got an environment where you can ask questions. I want you to ask questions. I want you to take in whatever lessons you feel you need to learn. So, Joe, how do you like that? I like that exchange. If I provide encouragement, in return, all I ask for is your engagement.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's all anybody should want. If I give you the opportunity to learn, I give you the opportunity to be included and be part of that decision making process. Yeah, I want you. I want I want that communication back. And sometimes it's not just your veteran staff; it's your rookie staff. There's been times where I printed policies to give to rookies because they had questions either about use of force or escapes or perimeter picket duties or whatever. And, I've printed these policies hundreds of times blindly. And you take for granted over the course of 20 years, policies change. It may be little subtle things, grammatical corrections or whatever. But I would give them to the rookie staff and let them know, hey, read this. And if you have any questions about it after the fact, come to me. And there's been times where they brought the policy to me and say, hey, Lieutenant, did you know that, this has actually changed? And there's been times where, there was changes implemented that hell, I wasn't even made aware of. So, you got to have that two-way communication. It's most effective.
Yeah, and I love this, Joe, because sometimes, to be honest with a lot of the changes that we're creating, some of our senior staff could feel like rookies all over again because they're being told to break away from what they've been comfortable with. So I love that, and we did discuss that again with the rookies. Now, guys, remember these first two steps: the inclusion safety and the learner safety is really dependent on the management side. Now, granted, the next step, which is contributor safety, this is really going to be definitely a partnership between management and the senior staff, but this is really the intentionality of the senior staff buying in. Remember, guys, we're creating a lot of changes, and sometimes I may not get all of senior staff in agreement, but I got to get some of them. So I have to work with some, and hopefully they have the courage to apply what's being done, even if they're around people that are being resistant. I know that corrections has changed, and there is some level of change that's being expressed in the academy. And then when the officers go from the academy right into the facility, the culture shifts. And it's hard for that rookie to now fit in to what the academy wanted. So what they do is within a matter of a week or two, they get swept up with the culture because again, they're too new. They don't have the energy to be doing this. They don't. They're just too new. Now, granted, senior staff, a lot more weight on them because they're senior staff. They shouldn't be as easily influenced by resistance or people kind of judging them for what they're doing. It's just, hey, you know what? I've been in this profession for 20 years. I really don't care what Joe says. So, and I'm not saying that in a rude way. I don't want people to think of that. I'm just saying if we're trying to push change and we're trying to move things forward, we have to be very wary of counter influence. For a rookie, counter influence is going to be very heavy for them. Because they're a rookie. They're looking to belong. And if the numbers are mostly people that resist, they could find themselves, kind of, in that group with those people that resist. But for a senior staff member who's got some time in, I think that there should be enough intentional effort on their end to avoid any counter influence to what's happening because they've been in the profession for a while. If I believe in what we're doing, again, when we talk about having a cohesive team, what do we got? We got transparency, right? Which builds trust, which allows for good conflict because conflict is based on what? Ideas and strategy, right? And then after you have conflict, let's say me and Joe are kind of, arguing, but in a respectful manner, it builds buy-in. So now if Joe feels heard and I feel heard, we both feel committed, whatever the direction may be. Then because we're committed, we can feel accountable, which is harder to do because that's more about behaviors and performance and ultimately lead to results. Having said that, if I'm a senior staff member and I believe in this change because I'm involved in that whole pyramid that I just talked about, and I feel that there is trust because I've been shown what we're trying to do, the transparency behind it. I've been allowed to speak my mind on it. So that's the conflict side, and since I've been able to speak my mind, I am committed to this. And because I'm committed, I want to be held accountable. And now I want to do results. I don't think the pressure from other senior staff, those that resist, will have that big of an influence. That's why you really need strong leaders on the floor at this point. So it's great to have those senior staff to buy in, because then they can help carry the message for the rookies who can't. And that gives the rookies a chance to connect to people. And by the way, at this point, hopefully the senior staff look for those rookies, because they may not be able to find you, but it should be your job to find them. So the next step here is the contributor. Now, guys, as I said, management, obviously it's a two-way street, but management kind of pulls back a little bit, and now it's up to the senior staff to contribute. So what we're going to do as management is we're going to respect the individual's innate need for autonomy, because I think senior staff kind of, they want to, they understand that they may have to be told what to do, but they kind of want to manage the how, especially after you explain to them the why. So granted, they do want a level of autonomy, so granted, we're trying something new. Let me try it out, a couple of ways this way. I'll get right back to you, tell you how it works. So you're giving them the parameters. This is what we want. And then you're pushing down the how so they can figure it out. So here, I'm going to give you some autonomy. And in return, you're going to start giving me some meaningful contribution. And what is meaningful contribution? Something successful, or even something that doesn't work, because then we could figure it out as well. But Joe, what's your thought about that respect part? So as management, we respect the individual's innate need for autonomy. So again, we're looking at creating some change. So this person has an idea of how we can reach this end game. So we give them a chance to do that. And then all we expect from them is an exhausted effort, a meaningful contribution.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to your veteran staff, you have, in the corrections profession, you have such an eclectic, diverse, population of not only people, attitudes, professionalism. One of my favorite things was, during shift briefings, I would bring up a almost impossible scenario. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong way of doing things. I would just throw it out there. And, I would watch my veteran staff argue about it. No, it won't work this way because, no, it won't work this way because, and, I look at the rookie staff, and the rookie staff are taking us in, and it's good, because not only do you have a difference of opinion, but the difference of opinion also leads to the same result. You got people thinking outside the box, you got people thinking inside the box, and you got the rookie soaking it in. So they know by looking at the veteran staff that, not necessarily bicker or argue, but given that scenario, you let them handle the outcome. And, the rookies automatically look at that and think, damn, well, he's got the veteran staff on board, one way or the other. Why the hell shouldn't we be?
I like that, Joe. And by the way, guys, I agree with what Joe is saying. I believe a lot of people, when they look to create change, they look to attract the masses and not realize that you're going to have more resistance, because change is ambiguous. What am I letting go of? I mean, we all know we have to change, but the question is, what am I letting go of? And a lot of us want to hold on to some of those core values that matter. So the question is, how do I remind them that these core values still exist, but we need to evolve them to this direction? But I agree with what they call the diffusion of innovation. I just need to find people that are fully bought in, a few. And I do need them to have influence. So yes, I mean, I do want to go to my rookies, whatever it is, of course, but I really want to look at my senior staff, because I know they can have influence, if anything, on the younger staff, and again, that is the generation that's coming. And then eventually you borrow that influence, and you could start to see that it starts to multiply exponentially. Now, Joe, here's another thing. So when it comes to permission now management, what is management telling us when they give the person the autonomy and meaningful contribution? Thank you, babe. My wife got me some water.
Oh,
Yeah, it's my girl. She's my girl. Right, babe?
Or is she just trying to shut you up?
Well, I don't know. She didn't even look at me when I said that. She just kind of walked upstairs. So basically, what's management now giving the senior staff in the creation of this change is they're giving them permission for the individual to work with appropriate autonomy and independence. And I think, to be honest with you, that's kind of what senior staff want. I don't think a lot of senior staff are outright resistant to change. They know what's happening, but I think they want to be a part of it. And I think when we come up and say, hey, we have to create this as an end game, and then you go to Joe and say, Joe, how do you think we can get this done? Now you got Joe's investment. Joe feels like an owner in regards to how we can create this. And I think in turn, if you can give them that autonomy and that independence, you start to see staff pushing in the right direction. And Joe, the social exchange here, Joe, is management gives autonomy with guidance. So again, I like that. Go do you, and I'll be in the background. And if I see something going totally array, I'll come in and we'll figure it out together. And in return, what I want from you now, Joe, and this is true, is if I'm going to give you autonomy and guidance at this level of contribution, I'm going to want performance and results. That's what I'm going to want. And what I mean by results doesn't always have to be successful. That's why fear wouldn't work for this part, because we're going through changes right now. So if I have a leader who's leading through fear, then to be honest with you, we're never going to grow, because staff is going to be afraid to make decisions that could possibly be a risk. But everything about change is a risk. So having said that, Joe, autonomy and guidance in exchange for performance and results. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to give them the latitude to actually take the ball and run with it. I told myself years ago that I'd rather coach a screw up than try to get through a know-it-all. When you give them something to do, give them the latitude to do it, give them the parameters, let them know that, as long as we're doing this within this set of parameters, within this policies and procedures, implement it. I want you to implement it, and I want you to tell me how it works. If you make a minor mistake, that's fine. We can fix those, and we can learn from those. But the thing is, I want you to have that opportunity, because you need to not be fearful to make a mistake, because in this profession, you're going to make a mistake without a doubt. And I want you to be able to fix those parameters. I want you to be able to fix that mistake later on down the road by making that mistake. That's what makes the investment from leadership to the front line so rewarding, because you give them the parameters to in the confines to do what you need to implement. And you will always get more investment from that style of person versus the know-it-all. Everybody gets comfortable in their jobs. Everybody gets comfortable in their careers. Nobody wants to take nothing. We don't want anybody to take anything from us that we don't want to give voluntarily. I was probably one of the worst when it comes to changes, but I learned that as long as you have an input into the outcome, you're not giving anything. You're not giving yourself away to that. You're just improving yourself.
And I'm going to tell you something, guys. When it comes to innovation, there's two types. There's defensive and offensive. Usually defensive innovation stops us from going into a negative direction, and offensive is more trying something new. Defensive innovation usually has less personal risk to it, which means that I may not be afraid to step in and contribute to something because, we need to. Like, I think we need to increase morale. Everybody would agree that morale is low in corrections. So I think that anybody makes an effort to try to increase morale, I think that people understand why that's needed. So it's not a crazy risk. It's just like, you know what? Let's try it. Let's see what works. And it's what you call defensive innovation. As we get to the next step, when it comes to challenging the status quo, the innovation here is more offensive, which means you're creating things new. You're taking people away from what they've been comfortable with. And there is a great amount of risk in that, because if it doesn't work, those resistors, they could be assholes. They could ridicule you. They can condescend you. And, again, the personal failure viewed by them onto you could be quite demeaning. But with that said, there is still some innovation when it comes to contributor safety. But usually the innovation that's being done is usually towards maybe something that's kind of going in a negative direction that we all agree should be fixed. And it's usually very at first task oriented, and then it could increase to something something more wide, I guess, or something like I'll give you an example. Like I may tell Joe, hey, do a cell search for me, and then Joe does a cell search. Hey, do some tours, and eventually I give Joe a whole unit. At first you try to build them up nice and slow through task, and then stuff that's more wider scale. But having said that, there is some innovation at the contribution stage, and usually it's innovation that kind of breaks us away from the negative directions that we're headed, in which we all agree we got to head into another direction. Now, this is where it matters. This is where true innovation comes. And now we're going to cross to the last and final stage, which is challenger safety. This is where we're going to start to see offensive innovation. So basically what we have here now is that once we have staff that feel included, and once they're safe to learn in the direction that we're headed, and now you start to see them start to contribute, they start to get some buy-in. We, as management now, because we could see them performing, we could see them making results. I kind of want them to be innovative. I want them now to to challenge the status quo, because again, I see them working, I see them performing, I see them creating results. So I'm okay with them telling me of ways that things could become different. And we talked about that, right? Like the policy is this, and we're trying to implement something. And then Joe's been trying it like crazy. It's just not working. And Joe may come up and say, hey, this procedure you got just isn't working. You could see I've tried. I would like to try it this way. And me as management, like, well, yeah, I did see Joe try. And you can see that his results are there. They're just not where I want them to be. So, Joe, what would be your suggestions? So here, this is unique. So now, guys, as you can see, this challenger safety is really challenging the status quo. So this is really creating the change, the offensive change to move us forward. And this is really where we start to become innovative. And innovative really equates to decision making. I mean, literally decision making strategically in the moment, whatever it is. And when it comes to the definition of respect, what am I as management giving my senior staff? Respect for the senior staff's innate need to innovate and improve the status quo. And I believe that. I know that a lot of people may think that some senior staff get stuck in their ways and they don't want to move from point A to point B because point A is so comfortable. And maybe for some that is. But when you start to tell staff and you're transparent with your efforts, and you tell them what's going on and you give them the why behind why something has to be done, most of the time they understand it and they want to give you suggestions of how it can make it better. So, Joe, if management now at this point, in an effort to get senior staff now, not just to buy in, but to be a part of what we're now creating. So now they're actively involved, which is great for me because I got their investment. I got their sense of ownership. So now they're just as much invested as I am. I respect their innate need to innovate and improve the status quo. That is something for me that I feel will also, as I said, motivate staff to continue to go ahead, innovate, take strategic risk. And this is totally the opposite of a fear-driven leader, correct?
Absolutely, and that is the total opposite spectrum of a fear-driven leader. If you're at this stage of your leadership, you have pretty much hit the mecca. It was one of them things that I used to tell my staff all the time: don't bring me a problem, bring me the problem and a solution. And when you buy into your staff and give them enough trust and enough dedication and loyalty to allow them not only to see the problem, evaluate the problem, but come up with an actual solution to the problem. You will see in some of these employees, you'll see a level of excitement. And sometimes with these veteran officers, it's exactly what they need to get them out of that rut. And, it's like you flipped a switch. You get people that are willing to make decisions, and let you know about what they did afterwards. As long as, everything went well. And even if there were mistakes, that's fine. I want you to make those mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we implement the things that we implement. But, involving your veteran staff to the point where you're allowing them to make decisions. Sometimes, when it's almost like you're a supervisory mentor to them. You want them to make decisions that, a supervisor would make, and you want them to have that critical thinking skill and be innovative as they do it. If you have hit that stage of your leadership, man, you are right where you need to be and where you should be.
Yeah, and guys, when it comes to the next part, when it comes to the permission as management, permission for the individual to make challenges to the status quo in good faith. Check this out. Me and Joe are buddies. I'm management. Joe's my front line, and we've been working on this thing together. I know he's invested in it. We kind of have a trust in each other. I know that even if he makes mistakes, I know it's on good intent because we're on the same page of where it needs to be. And that's kind of where that good faith comes in. Yeah, Joe, do what you got to do. I trust in where you want to head because where we both are trying to head. And for me, that matters. So now if Joe makes a mistake, because this is something that insecure leaders do. And guys, when we talk about fear too, don't get me wrong, guys, fear is also rooted in insecurity. So if you have leaders that really lead through fear, let's not negate the fact that some of that fear is probably fed through insecurity in their ability to be effective. But with that said, I when someone makes an error, the first thing I like to do is ask them, what happened and what were you thinking? And not in judgment, in curiosity. Joe, why did you think that was a good idea? I got to know what your intent was. Now, granted, me and Joe have been working on it. I've seen Joe contributing at this point. I've seen Joe's results, success or failure. He's producing. He's doing what he needs to do. So I want Joe to step up. I want Joe to manage that how, because he's there. He's doing it. He's going to know the concerns, be more immediate to those concerns than I'll ever be. And he's going to know those concerns in real time because he's dealing with it. So I think that's a great permission. Joe, go ahead, do what you got to do, challenge that status quo, because I know your intent is to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. And is this risky? It always is going to be risky. But if anybody could do it, Joe's in the best position to solve that. What's your thoughts on that, Joe? That permission for an individual to make challenges to the status quo in good faith?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You want people to make decisions, and you want them to make the decisions because you know that they have no ill, malicious, harmful intent in the way that they're going to apply these decisions. So you want them to be able to make these decisions. Does it always go the way that we plan it? Hell no, it never will. There's no such thing as a perfect environment. There's going to be mistakes made. But, just like you said, what was their intent? Where was their mind at? Were they malicious in this? Were they malicious and not so much harmful, but were they malicious in the way that they implied this? Were they thinking about the risks all the way around of what their decision outcome could be? But it's something that once you have enough buy-in to your people, this is something you should be doing, because this is the stage where you want your employees. You want your employees to feel comfortable enough without fear, to make these decisions, as long as there's no harmful or no malicious intent made, and it's within policy and parameters. It's exactly what you want. You got them supervisors that rule by intimidation and fear. Why? Because they made a mistake once and probably got their ass smoked for it. Okay, but that doesn't mean that you have to project your supervisory experience onto your people as fear and intimidation. That's never going to get anything accomplished. It never has, and it never will.
Yeah, and guys, I just want to, in the book here, How to Succeed in Corrections, chapter 41, where it says, seek authenticity as you strive for perfection. Page 156, the first paragraph after the quote literally says, if one seeks to have a perfect career in corrections, they'll be sadly disappointed when they quickly discover that perfection in corrections is an unattainable myth. There are so many decisions that must be made throughout the course of the day that staff are bound to get some wrong. Sometimes correctional staff, even their leaders, hold themselves to these ridiculously high standards, these high sets of expectations, so high that if at any point they fail to balance expectation with behavior and capabilities, they fall into a state of dispositional depression. In essence, they take the total blame for failing without possibly considering that maybe failure occurred because the test was rigged. Basically, for them, it was more about being right than about personal and professional growth. And let's not lie, when it comes to this, when it comes to creating change, it is going to be effort over outcome. And it is definitely a journey of growth, because success and failure, whatever it is, it moves us closer to where we want to be. And to be honest with you, sometimes we get so trapped in successes that we don't realize that that's not going to last forever either. So be humble in your successes. In some cases, be proud of your failure, because you may find that failure moves you forward. And I love this part, and this is the exchange. So now I'm management, and what am I going to give Joe while he's trying to start to challenge the status quo? Is I'm going to give him what they say in the military, air cover. I'm going to protect him. That's my job. My job is to protect him so Joe can figure this all out. And then in return, I expect Joe to be truthful with me. What's happening? What's going on? And this right here is definitely why you cannot have fear in your leadership. Because a lot of leaders that lead through fear, I don't say leaders, bosses, whatever you want to call them, that lead through fear, some of them don't want to hear the truth, because to them, a truth is a challenge to their position. And I will say one thing, and I learned this, I think, in Timothy Clark's book. I have it in my book, by the way, as well. One of the hardest things you ever could do is speak truth to power. But there's actually something harder than that. And this is when you're figuring everything out. When you're figuring everything out, the harder thing to do is speak opinion to power. So think about that. If I know exactly where I'm headed, and let's say let's make Joe management now, and I'm front line, and I know exactly where we need to be. I need a leader that will welcome that truth, right? Because I know where we got to be. This is going to work fine, and that's great. And that is still hard to do. But what's even harder to do is when I'm trying to figure it out, talk to my powers that be and give them opinion of what could be better. Opinion is a lot different than truth. And now, with that said, think about that connection that me and Joe, management and frontline, have to have. We've built trust, which allows for this conflict to occur, but it's a respectful conflict built on, the respect that we both know where we want to be. So we could discuss strategies and ideas, and then eventually that's what leads to commitment, as I mentioned, accountability and results. But Joe, got this is good. I provide you air cover as management, and then you kick back to me candor and truth as to what needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's a big difference between opinions and truth. Opinions is your own version of events, and truth is the way it actually is. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing to hear, but sometimes it's a necessity that we hear it. In the grand scheme of things, that's what keeps everybody safe, because nobody wants to hear the ugly truth, but unfortunately sometimes we got to hear the ugly truth, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, so guys, so again, that's the 4 levels. I thought that was explained. You want to see the one for the rookies as well. It is a different perspective, but we do model off that. But again, it goes from exclusion. On here case, I think exclusion does really apply, because senior staff felt separated from being a part of the change for so long that they could feel less than what they're actually worth. So exclusion to inclusion to learner, and then contributor to overall challenger safety, which is again where we become truly innovative. Joe, any closing thoughts? This was a good dialogue, I thought.
This was a good dialogue. For the supervisors, I implore you to get, Anthony's book, especially how to, exceed in corrections, because I'm telling you, you need these folks a hell of a lot more than they need you. You need to include them. And, one of my longest and upstanding beliefs since Anthony broke out the Bible was, one of my inputs for chapter 84, formal discipline should never be the first option. If you're going to give them the latitude to make a decision, right, wrong, or indifferent, as long as it has no harmful effects or there was no malicious intent. My quote was that a true leader should be able to right small wrongs by training, discussion, and solid leadership, and never with the use of formal disciplinary as a first option. You got to give them the potential to grow. You got to give them the potential to give input and be able to communicate. You build that trust with them, and they will build that trust with you. And communication is a two-way street. If you're going to give them the latitude to make a mistake, don't be the first one to swoop down on them and try to, usher them out the door. You're doing yourself an injustice, because not only are you discouraging that officer, regardless whether it's a rookie or veteran, eventually that will kill the morale of your shift if you continue to do it.
And Joe, I love what you said too about the books, because to be honest with you, I carry these with me. And I kind of even just go back and look at the quotes. That's why I'm glad that people put quotes in my book, because I can go back and not just relearn from my material, but also relearn from the people that put the quotes in. But like we just said, we just had a discussion here. And to be honest with you, there's a couple of areas that we could put back, even in the new book. I was going to read off something on accountability, but I'm like, you know what, we can go all day on this. But guys, this was a good dialogue, because in our effort to grow and develop, I want people to know that it is a two-way street. So if you noticed here, as I said at the beginning, management kickstarts something, but senior staff, they play a role too. They're intentional in its effort. You can't just passively expect management to do everything. I mean, we had the article before, is management solely responsible for employee morale? And they're not. And the reason, guys, why this is so important is psychological safety, because that is the end result here. You hit all these 4 stages. You start working in an environment that is safe psychologically. Well, think about that, guys. It allows for innovation, allows for growth and development. And when people feel invested, they feel valued, and the morale goes up. So, I mean, I think this is a great dialogue in today's times. I think this is something that we need to discuss, because again, we're losing out on a lot of that. So I'm just trying to fill in those gaps. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.